What's up? It's Tom. Thanks for clicking on this video. Let's go over my updated prospect list, and actually quite a bit changed from my post-trade deadline list. We're not going to really go real in-depth on these guys. I kind of wanted to open up with a more general discussion about the state of the minor league system. There's a lot to be excited about, absolutely. You see those top three names in particular. Obviously, Royce Lewis and Emmanuel Rodriguez have lost some kind of shine because they were injured most of the year. But I really think those two guys, in addition to Brooks Lee, I think these are three potentially, long-term cornerstone type players. And then you have quite a few pitchers. I don't see anybody that really profiles as like an ace from the look of it, but you have a lot of guys who have full repertoires who've pitched very well in, Simeon Woods Richardson, Marco Raya, David Festa, Louis Varland. Ronnie Henriquez is up with the big club right now. Matt Wallner and Edouard Julien, the guys who had 1-2 for the Twins minor league hitter of the year at 9 and 12. So I kind of want to make sure I put that out there first. That there is a lot to like, especially in this 15 here. And Yasser Mercedes is a guy really to know. Had a monster year. Was one of the better international free agents of his signing class. He's still only 17, I believe, and put up some great numbers. A great defensive center fielder. Anyway, main point, very much into this top 15. I think after that, things get pretty soft, comparatively speaking. There are some guys I like. There are certainly some players who have some more upside out of the top 15. But I think if you, in comparison to recent Twins lists, in comparison to other teams, that 16 through 30 in my top 30, and then kind of on down, I think there's a little bit less depth in this system, and it's kind of understandable to a degree. They graduated Duran, Miranda, Ryan, and Winder were all prospect eligible entering this year, and then they traded away over the last 9 months or whatever their first, second, third, and fourth round picks from the 2021 draft. They still have Noah Miller, who is the sandwich round between the first and the second round, but first, second, third, and fourth round picks all traded away. So that's quite a bit of talent either being graduated or leaving the system. And it shows basically, I don't keep as close of attention on the other teams in the league, but I can tell you that Baseball America ranks this as the 25th prospect system in baseball, and MLB Pipeline has them 23rd. So, just kind of wanted to put that out there. There's still a lot to like. This is not as strong of a system as we're used to seeing for the Minnesota Twins for the most part. Wondering why, if Matt Wallner and Edouard Julien were the best players in the minor leagues, the best hitters in the minor leagues, why aren't they higher? They're both very limited in, defense and base running to a certain degree, much less with Julien than Wallner. Both guys who I don't see any reason why they can't have major league careers. But just kind of without that sort of full set of tools, it's hard for me to elevate them much farther. But again, these are guys who are in the high minors. Wallner's on the Twins now, so there's still a lot both to like in this system, and guys who are either knocking on the door or with Wallner and Varland and Henriquez already getting a shot here late in the season. So let's scroll on down to the 16 through 30. Matt Cantorino, absolutely love the stuff. The talent is immense, and I definitely think he's going to be a reliever now. I don't think there's any chance he can develop as a starter at this point. I think that ship has sailed, and the Twins need to accept that and move forward. That my love of Cantorino is mixed in with that uncertainty, moving him down to 16. Some other, familiar names. A lot of the same things I could be said about Jordan Balazovic, but instead of health concerns, it's just performance. How long can you see? And I know he's ending the year strong. So that might kind of surprise people that I'm continuing to move him down. But I really don't. It's hard to maintain faith that he's going to be a starting pitcher. And that really hinges a lot for me on prospect status. I don't typically rank guys who are relievers unless they are really special. I figured Duran probably was going to be a reliever, but obviously he had a special arm. And, you know, Balazovic sort of fits that to some degree too. That's why he's still 19 on my list. Junior Severino continues to climb. He's a guy the Twins are more than likely going to are going to add to the 40-man roster to protect. They have to add him to the 40-man roster in order to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. I think with the way he's played at Double-A and his position flexibility on the infield, I would suspect he would get drafted if they don't add him. And, you know, I think he'd be a good guy to keep around. And rounding out, you see some new additions. Cody Lawyerson, you know, probably the guy who caught my eye more than anybody in the second half in terms of prospects go. And guys who've been in the system for a while, the guy who popped up the most, as opposed to like a draftee or, you know, something like that. And you know, his velo isn't eye popping, but I think he's got some of that like Joe Ryan. And that's the hard thing without having like all the really hard data on these guys' pitches. It's hard to speculate on these things. I don't know if it's that Lawyerson hides the ball well. It appears that way to me. I don't know if hitters get thrown off by his tempo, which is unique. That could be the case as well. Or he could have like an extension thing like Joe Ryan, to where he just releases the ball so far out. It could be a combination of things, but hitters do not see his pitches very well. And he pitched excellent for Wichita. I'm very intrigued, and I really felt like it was worthy of elevating him to the 24th spot on my list. But, you know, rounding it out, there are a couple other guys, too, who are on the short season leagues, which we don't pay as close attention to on this channel. So those were kind of some things I had to catch up on. I do try to, you know, periodically make sure I'm abreast of what's going on down there. But Jose Rodriguez just had a monster year in the DSL. Ricardo Olivar was very good in the FCL, or I think they are calling it the GCL again? They changed the names and then they changed it back for some of them. I don't know. But both those guys are certainly interesting. You know, Jose Rodriguez potentially could be the next, Misael Urbina or Manuel Rodriguez, who's, you know, a guy who is playing in the short season leagues, and you kind of see that he played well, and you kind of start to hear stuff about him, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're a top 10, top 5 prospect. Again, Yasser Mercedes is absolutely on that, you know, trajectory as well. You can see I had him 25th. I'm already moving him up to 15th. I'm very excited about him. But that rounds out my list. There were some other guys as well who were on the short season that I was considering. Rafael Cruz and Cesar Lares were kind of the two main ones, in addition to Rodriguez and Olivar. Just kind of to touch on some other names here I've got noted. We mentioned the 2021 draft is basically decimated. They do have some later round picks that are playing very well, like David Festa and some other guys. But going back to 2020, that was that short draft, 5-round draft. You do not notice first round pick Aaron Sabato is in my top 30 anymore. You do not notice that second round pick Aleric Solari is in my top 30 anymore. It's not that I'm giving up on those guys, but they have not done enough to stick up here. Sabato, much more than Solari, is defensively limited, but Solari is only going to be either like a second baseman or a left fielder. You have to hit a ton these days in order to stay. And neither of those guys have that's what it comes down to. Neither of those guys have shown enough, in my eyes, to stick even on this diminished top 30. And then going back to 2019, Keoni Cavaco also, he's probably the guy I was more considering leaving on, even though, you know, his numbers aren't great. Cavaco is at least, in my opinion, progressing along. He has a bit of the excuse that it's very difficult to hit in the Florida State League. I think he's really good defensively, and at third base, he looks a little bit more comfortable, is how I would put it, a little more natural. And I believe that's, if I'm remembering correctly, that's where he played mostly in high school, so that makes sense anyway. So I wouldn't, we're not going to totally say those guys are helpless. And especially Cavaco, I think, could there is that potential still that he puts it together. He was always kind of expected to be a late bloomer, I don't want to count out the athletes in particular. Those are the guys I feel are more than likely to be able to successfully go navigate a swing change. And then obviously if they're bringing defensive value, if they're bringing, base running value, that just helps their overall value as well. So, but they're not on the list for a reason. So, and sometimes that's one of the productive things about making these lists is you kind of have to check yourself on how much you like a guy or how much you think of a guy. And then kind of the last bucket of players, we talked about all these recent high draft picks. There's also a lot of guys who you're probably very familiar with if you watch the channel, not making this list because it's hard for me to look at guys who are in their mid 20s and, project out a whole lot more, or, if you're not a major leaguer at that point, it's really hard to envision. It's not impossible. We see it every year. There's some guys that who are like 27 or older, cracking, and establishing a major league career a bit for themselves at certain points. But and there's a lot of these guys, and a lot of them had really good years. Jermaine Palacios, Chris Williams, who's on this tear for the Saints to end the season. Michael Hellman, who plays all over the place, played pretty well for the Saints. Evan Sisk in the bullpen has pitched pretty well this year. Definitely one of the bright spots on the minor league side in terms of relievers. And then Deshaun Kersey, who is a really good center fielder defensively, a very fast base runner. Potentially could be, a fourth, fifth outfielder because he plays center field. Those guys, there's just not that many of those guys. But again, kind of with that same conversation with those Sabato Cavaco types, those guys are names to know. I mean, you're familiar with it. If you watch the channel, you've seen tons of highlights of all those guys. Those guys are who could, as they have Palacios at least, guys who could factor into the depth picture for the Twins going forward, but just didn't find a room for them on the top 30 list. So. That's all that I had for now. I think, one of the next time was we do these and I'm not kind of in the thick of having been in the daily recaps, maybe have some more time to grab some video and flesh one of these out a bit more. But honestly, Seth Stowe's asked for updated prospects lists at Twins Daily, which he does periodically. And that's how this came together. And once I put it together, I was like, well, I'm going to make a video on it. So I figured we'd chat. Let me know what you think. Let me know any questions you have. Let me know who your favorites are. We'll talk again soon. Thanks for checking this out.